Welcome to our channel where we bring you breaking updates, hidden truths, and the most shocking developments from around the world. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines and know what the mainstream media won't tell you, then you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and stay with us till the very end, because what you're about to hear today will leave you speechless. Something unexpected is happening in Europe right now. Even Ukraine itself can't believe what the European Union is preparing to do, and it has left Russia and Vladimir Putin in shock. Reports are emerging that the EU has crafted a plan involving 120,000 troops, and the consequences of this move could reshape not only the war in Ukraine but the entire balance of power in the region. Let's dive into this carefully, because every detail here matters. For months, Russia has pushed its military operations in Ukraine with a strategy aimed at exhausting Ukraine's forces and testing Europe's resolve. Putin has gambled on the idea that Europe would eventually grow tired of supporting Kyiv, especially with rising energy costs, economic inflation, and internal political disagreements. He believed that the EU would eventually step back, leaving Ukraine isolated. But what is happening now seems to be the opposite of what Putin expected. Behind closed doors, the European Union has been preparing a potential rapid deployment force of up to 120,000 troops. This isn't just another round of sanctions, another diplomatic statement, or another symbolic gesture. This is a military plan that could change the game entirely. The very idea that the EU is even considering such a move has sent shockwaves not only through Moscow but through Kyiv as well. Ukraine, while grateful for support, is stunned by the scale of what's being proposed. For a country that has fought tooth and nail for every inch of its territory, the idea that European forces could directly back them with such a massive deployment is both shocking and reassuring. It's something Ukraine has long dreamed of, but never truly expected. Now, let's talk about why this is such a big deal. First, the European Union has always been seen primarily as an economic and political alliance rather than a military one. Defense has usually been left to NATO, led largely by the United States. But with the constant threat from Russia and the ongoing war, the EU is slowly transforming into something much more powerful. By planning to deploy such a force, Europe is sending a direct message: they are no longer willing to stand by and let Russia dictate the rules of the game. From Putin's perspective, this is a nightmare scenario. For years, he has counted on dividing Europe, weakening NATO, and isolating Ukraine. But instead, the war has done the opposite. It has pushed Europe closer together, and now the EU is talking about military action on a scale that could directly counter Russian moves. If 120,000 European troops were ever deployed, it would put enormous pressure on Russia's military, already stretched thin by losses, logistics failures, and low morale. Let's put this number in perspective. 120,000 troops is not a symbolic force. It's not just a peacekeeping mission. It is an army capable of real, sustained operations. It could secure borders, protect critical infrastructure, and even assist Ukraine's own forces in pushing back Russian advances. Such a deployment would change the military balance on the ground almost immediately. Now, of course, this plan is not without risks. Sending European troops into direct conflict with Russia could escalate the war in ways we can barely imagine. Putin has always warned of dire consequences if Western forces intervene directly. Nuclear threats, cyber warfare, hybrid attacks on European infrastructure, these are all on the table if the EU takes this step. But the fact that the EU is even preparing for such a scenario shows just how much the mood in Europe has changed. What drove this change? A combination of factors. First, the continued brutality of the war, with civilian casualties and destroyed cities, has hardened European public opinion against Russia. Second, the realization that if Ukraine falls, other nations, like Poland, the Baltic states, and even parts of Central Europe, could be next. Europe has realized that this is not just Ukraine's fight, it is a fight for the security of the entire continent. Third, the United States has made it clear that while it will support Ukraine, it also expects Europe to take more responsibility for its own defense. The EU is beginning to understand that it cannot always rely solely on Washington. And so, the groundwork for a European military awakening is being laid. Ukraine's reaction has been mixed. On one hand, the idea of European boots on the ground is something they have prayed for. On the other hand, they worry about escalation. Could this draw Russia into even more desperate actions? Could Putin launch wider attacks, dragging all of Europe into war? These questions weigh heavily on Kyiv's leaders. And yet, they also know that this is the kind of decisive move that could finally turn the tide. For Ukraine's soldiers, who have been fighting tirelessly for years, knowing that 120,000 European troops might soon stand with them would be a huge morale boost. For ordinary Ukrainians, who live each day under the shadow of air raids, it would mean hope that the nightmare might one day end. Meanwhile, in Moscow, reports suggest shock and anger. Putin built his power on the belief that the West is weak, divided, and unwilling to take risks. The very idea that the EU might commit such a massive military force strikes at the heart of his strategy. If Europe shows this kind of unity, Russia's chances of forcing a victory in Ukraine grow slimmer by the day. This moment feels like a turning point. For decades, Europe has relied on diplomacy and economics to maintain peace. But now, with tanks rolling across borders and missiles striking cities, Europe is realizing that sometimes power must be met with power. The plan for 120,000 troops may not yet be finalized, but the signal it sends is unmistakable. Europe is preparing for the possibility of war on a scale it has not faced since World War II. As this story unfolds, the world will be watching closely. Will the EU truly deploy such a force, or is this a strategy to scare Moscow into backing down? Will Putin escalate further, or will he be forced to reconsider his ambitions? And most importantly, will Ukraine finally see the level of support it needs to secure its future as a free and independent nation? One thing is certain, the shockwaves of this decision are being felt across Kyiv, Moscow, Brussels, and Washington. What happens next could determine the course of history for decades to come. Thank you for watching today's video. If you found this information eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss our deep dives into the world's most important stories. Stay strong, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next video.